Is true fulfillment something that can be achieved, or is it a journey that starts from within? Welcome back to the show. And listen up, all you high-powered, high-driven men out there. Today, we're going to dive into the hidden power of the nervous system, trauma, and the transformative practices that can help modern men like you find authentic purpose.
Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
Hey, so our guest today is Rick William. Williams or Rick William? Rick William. So he's got two. Our guest today is Rick William. I was thinking like Ricky Williams is on the fucking show today, man. The quarterback. Sorry, Rick. Not the same guy, but we're glad you're here. He's a coach, meditation teacher, entrepreneur who after exiting his company at age 25, dedicated himself to mastering transformative practices that bridge Western wisdom and Eastern psychology.
He now the other way around. Eastern wisdom.
What John's trying to say is, so I fucking said, I was thinking that, and then I came out the wrong way. So his practice, so Eastern wisdom and Western psychology, so Rick now supports high-performing men worldwide, helping them navigate trauma, strengthen the nervous system, and find authentic purpose. So today, Rick is going to help us, is going to share some of his insights on shifting from achievement stacking to true happiness and self-awareness. Welcome, Rick, to the show. John, great to see you. Great to be here, gentlemen.
Yes, indeed.
Well, John, great to be here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm really appreciating that we're starting the show with some levity already.
Yeah, I know.
Man, we live with levity. If we can't laugh at ourselves, who can we laugh at? So
true that.
All right. Well, hey, Rick, welcome to the show. And Will, good to see you. I mean, we just recorded another episode. So if you guys are watching back-to-back episodes, you'll see that I'm wearing the exact same thing. So forgive me for not changing between episodes. Will had the foresight to actually do that. But we've also got some announcements. Our Men Talking Mindfulness microdoses, we've started putting those out. They're mini episodes that are in between these full-length episodes. They're Tuesday through Saturday. They are mini episodes cut from our previous episodes. So if you're a new listener and you're tuning in to the episodes that we're publishing right now, this gives you a little taste of some episodes that we've done in the past. And maybe if you are so inclined from the microdoses, as we're calling them, they're between 3 and 10 minutes long. You're so inclined, you can go check out the full episodes, and the full episode link is in the show comments or show notes. And we've also got our social fitness club starting in January. If you want to find out more about that, it's at mentalkingmindfulness.com, or you can just text MTM to 33777. That said, we're going to kick the show off with a simple grounding practice, a one breath practice, just to get the three of us settled, and for you tuning in, get you guys settled as well. So let's start by getting comfortable, and let's begin by doing a nice relaxing exhalation and feeling empty at the bottom, and then a nice long, slow, deep breath in, feeling that fullness at the top, holding it, and then releasing. And as you release that breath, bring some movement into your body, rolling your neck around, wiggling your fingers, your toes, feeling yourself in this present time, in this present space. And here we go. Thank you all for being here, for tuning in, for sharing our podcast, for helping us grow. And again, Rick, thanks for being here. Let's get into this. Will, over to you.
Okay. Hey, so let's start with connection. And this might seem like a very weird connection, between trauma and a pathway to purpose. So how did you come to understand this connection?
Great question, Will. It was a journey that I'd been asking for some time. I think a lot of us are asking the question is like, what does it mean to live a purposeful and fulfilling life? And I find myself watching every single YouTube video, every single podcast that I could on the topic, from Joseph Campbell to understanding myth, and kind of really going down the rabbit hole to really understand what purpose and fulfillment was. And as I was walking down that path, I started to see, sense, and know the connections between really what purpose and fulfillment is, being an expression of our authentic self. And inside of that, well, that sounds really easy, right? Like, well, just express yourself authentically. We just end the podcast now. But also recognizing that that's really where the journey began, right? It's like, okay, wow, like if this is really a journey of authentic self-expression, and then pretty quickly starting to recognize that I don't feel comfortable expressing my authentic self in front of myself, never mind in front of other people. So that was the beginning of the quest.
Let's talk about that, just before, or maybe it was part of that quest. What have been some of your own trials, your own challenges with trauma and success? I know we kicked it off with the fact that you exited a very successful company at 25 years old. What led you to that? What have been those trials, those tribulations, if you will?
The trials of the path, which I really think are the path, and all of the insights gained, I don't think would have their weight unless they came from the lived experience, right? Otherwise, we just read a book and we'd have everything we need. I think there's something really rich about going through the journey, and part of the journey that I had to go through in order to find a life that feels fulfilling and meaningful and aligned with who I truly am and have functional relationships was through living the exact opposite, was, creating a life when I think I started my business when I was like 20. Yeah, and I ran until I was 25.
And what was this business, Rick? What were you doing in this business?
Yeah, so I had a few businesses actually, all in the health and fitness industry. We created the largest affiliate in Europe in the kind of health and fitness industry. So if you imagine, just for ease, Groupon, but just niche, Groupon that would just be niche for health and fitness. That's what we did. And no one else was doing it at the time. So, and we had better deals than anyone else on the internet in Europe. So we did really well. It was a great product. Not very fulfilling though. So yes, I recognized that I had really created a life and was aligning my life based on what was valued in my family. So I come from a family of health and fitness fanatics. My uncle was Mr. Scotland, and my mother was Mrs. UK Health and Fitness in the 90s, and then again in her 50s some years later. So yes, I was like surrounded by health, fitness in the gym. So very naturally, I kind of just took all of that on and hadn't really gone on my own self-inquiry and didn't have the support around me to really be able to differentiate like what was mine in terms of things that I love and what were other people's. So I hadn't really went on that individuation process to really know what I care about in this life. And therefore it was manifesting itself as kind of exterior success, undercurrents of looking for validation inside of that, hidden deep insecurities inside of that, using all of the different strategies to be able to mitigate the unconscious suffering that I was experiencing, both burnout, stress, anxiety, depression. I didn't have any functional skills in regards to regulating my nervous system, my emotions, expressing my needs, communicating with myself and other people. And all of those things were not developed skills at this point, which was causing all sorts of malfunction on the surface of my life. And I didn't really have any idea what the fuck to do about that at the time.
What was the break? When did you, reach that breaking point where you're just like, this isn't working for me? Was it just a slow thing, or was there like this moment in time?
It was a slow thing through mindfulness meditation, actually. So, I was hearing about meditation at the time. This is I'm like early 20s. I'm 36 now for context. And the early podcasters like Tim and maybe Joe were on the scene, and they were subtly talking about meditation. It wasn't like mainstream at this point. It was kind of just pre that boom. And I just kept hearing about other successful people, because that's what I was interested in at the time, doing meditation as a practice.
More success, more,
yeah,
more, right? More shit, more responsibility, more stress. Anyway, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, all of that. Yes, exactly. that's why I started a daily practice. And then Headspace came out, I think in 2012, January 2012. And I started their year-long program. So that when they first launched their app, if anyone's familiar with it, you couldn't have this whole choice. Yeah, it's amazing, right? I just got a VR, I got a Meta VR headset just because I love playing with tech. They also have VR and VR Headspace as well, which is pretty cool. That's another conversation.
I want to come back to that here in a second.
Yeah, let's do that.
The tech nerd.
So yeah, they
Headspace,
launched
the year long.
2012 January. Yeah, exactly. They launched in January, and because I didn't have this choice, which I actually think was a great benefit for it, I was just like, cool, I'm going to do this every single day for the next year. And I just went on that whole process with Andy. And through that, I just started having just like emergent insight and spontaneous release inside of just meditative practice. And I'm sure many of us will have experienced those things inside our practice at some point. If you haven't, you will. So that was happening for me. And that was just slowly kind of chipping away at the kind of identity structure I had created. And because I was creating and seeing my life through a wider view, which is essentially one thing that all meditative practices do is help us gain a wider view, which is where all wisdom and insight emerges from. Because of that, I was starting to gain a wider view. I was starting to gain wisdom and insight and see my life through a different, deeper perspective, and started to see the identity structures that I created that weren't necessarily coming from like my core, my heart, my power.
Yeah. It was like a program, fueled by stress, anxiety, dopamine, and trying to achieve, because I've been there, to achieve and attain other people's status. You know what I mean? Right. It's just like, I need this, I need the wife, I need the car, I need the house, I need the kids, and I need all these things that say, like, to show the world, virtue signaling, like, this is the kind of man I am, instead of like from that deeper place, like you're talking about on the inside. So why, like, I mean, we're talking about success and achievement and material possessions come along with that kind of thing. Yeah. And that is like really, a big way that we are programmed in this country, for sure, and other places as well, that was what success is. So, why is this concept so difficult for high achieving men to accept, that there's other levels of fulfillment and success other than just acquisition and status and position?
I sense that's the case. I'd love to hear both your thoughts on it too, but I sense that's the case just because beyond that is not known. And I think most people don't necessarily have an understanding of the larger timelines of emotional psychological development. And part of that is due to Piaget's work, who was a developmental psychologist, stopping at about age 21, 22. So we kind of live in a culture soup that assumes that adulthood is at 21, you grow up and then kind of that's it. But I mean, there are many other stages of development, as we know, that go beyond that. And I think if we're looking at the development of a human being, I think I'm actually for achievement, and as I was going through my change, I was kind of a little more against it, but I'm actually for achievement. I think it's an incredible thing. I think it's a part of a healthy individuation process that I think supports the construction of a solid identity structure, of a strong sense of self, which I think is actually important as we continue down the path, that you have both a strong sense of self and have the capacity to kind of open up and let that go, so that you can be both strong and flexible. And I think whether it be in the gym or doing yoga, I mean, you combine the two, you kind of got superpowers, right? You want to be strong and flexible. And I think that stage of my development and many men's development supports the kind of like, or at least it supported me, I'll speak personally. I can go out in the world and do things and make change. I am not disempowered. I can empower myself to take action and change the external circumstances in my life. And that was a really empowering part of my experience. However, it also hit a ceiling, just like I know when I understood all of the information in 8th grade, I mean, I got it, right? Like I got the memo, and then it was necessary to go to the next stage because I was like capping out, and I could sense, see, and feel that I was capping out at that. And I could see other people, mentors, guides in my life who were showing up at that time, listening to podcasts like yourselves. I could feel the truth in their experience, in their bodies, in what they were sharing, that there was actually other things to experience in life. And I started just walking the path to find that out for myself.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, Will and I are definitely not against achieving either.
No, not at all.
I mean, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation if we didn't have some type of desire to achieve. And you know what that achievement looks like is definitely going to be different for everyone. But you definitely, as I've learned, and I will just backtrack a second, Rick. You know, when I started meditating, it was sold to me as a performance enhancement as well. I have since grown a lot from that, and I know that there's much more to mindfulness and meditation than only what it can do for your performance. But I have found that in achieving that next thing, whatever that next thing may be, I've never achieved happiness through that. What I have achieved happiness, or a sense of happiness, a sense of fulfillment through, is through serving others, through being with my children and being with my wife and being present in the moment with them. And certainly I get thrills out of an achievement, but I certainly don't have any type of long-lasting happiness or long sense of fulfillment at all. Eventually comes back down to some level of equilibrium. So I do like that you stated it's not that you're against achievement, and it's not that you can't have achievement and have happiness, but it's that the achievement does not lead to happiness. So I love that. And then real quick sidebar, VR, I've done meditation in VR with the app called Trip, TRIPP. It's fantastic. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Okay, so sidebar.
Yeah. Well, I drop into
go for it,
achievement for a little bit. And I think it's important for everybody, but definitely men, because of our kind of linear internal energetic structure, if you will, like always just trying to attain and achieve and get to the next thing. That achievement really helps too. You talked about self. We had Seth Copold, here last week. Copold, and we really deconstructed the self and the 13 elements, ingredients of the self through the IFS system. And one of them, or a couple of them, that really help to that success kind of fuels and energizes is confidence and courage. And when I'm achieving results and whatever that is, whatever my pursuit is, it's like that's when I gain more confidence. That's when I get more courageous. Then I take more risks, right? Put myself out there a little bit more and keep asking the question, what else can I do? What else can I do? And just through that quest and through that question, I think you can really, break out like yourself. It's like, what else is there? I mean, you're achieving a tremendous amount of success at a young age, right? I mean, through money and this and that. And then it's like, wait, there's just something missing. And I think if you just keep moving forward, with that ultimate kind of quest of just happiness, it's going to lead you to these practices, and you're going to realize that, like you said, John, that achievement is an equilibrium of not just, look at what I've achieved, right? But like, this is who I am, and not being afraid, you said earlier, to authentically express who you are. And that's when I feel like you're really like in tune with yourself and the divine and the people around you, for sure.
Yeah, beautifully put, Will. And I'd love to just add on the back of that. It's what's coming up as you're sharing is remembering, all of us remembering that we're like biological creatures. Because what we're really talking about here, if we go into that, is we're talking about mastering dopamine. That's like the chemical of it's the seeking chemical. And then we're talking about mastering serotonin, oxytocin, which is where you're going to get fulfillment from. And the beautiful thing about meditation, I mean, talking about meditation itself is like talking about cooking. I mean, there's like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of recipes. But many meditations will support the ability for us to come in contact with turning that external dopamine out, like outward seeking dopamine, turning it in, and then learning how to work with the inner processes of the heart, serotonin, oxytocin. And then you can start to learn how to kind of fire and wire that together in such a way that supports our authentic expression to come online. And I mean, then you could go even further. If we look at, say, like Tonglen practice, you start firing up the heart, start firing up serotonin, oxytocin, and then you can start bringing yours or our trauma into your body in the space, and you can start, alchemizing those processes together, where you're essentially bringing up elements of, cortisol, adrenal responses, which is where all states of stress come from, and you start pairing that with oxytocin. And then you do that and it starts to feel good. You come into the right relationship with suffering. And then you're like, oh, well, that was kind of cool. Little dopamine result. And then you've just fired all of that neurochemistry in a direction that supports us to actually, be who we want to be in the world in an authentic way, and allows for us to both have mastery over our dopamine and have connection to our serotonin, oxytocin, which allows us to be in those, as you were saying, John, beautiful relationships with our friends, our family, our loved ones, and then, create things like this podcast and the businesses and projects that we have that will require us to have that dopamine system online, so that we're not getting distracted at every hurdle or every, thing that comes up on Instagram or every message that comes in. We need to have the ability to steer towards the goal. And I mean, I really think that's one of the greatest benefits of practice.
Yeah. Well, you talked about nervous system regulation. We kind of mentioned it earlier, and now you're kind of dipping into, some of the challenge. What are some of the challenges like that you want to get into this dopamine regulation and self-mastery? Like, some of the men that you're working with, what are some of those common obstacles that they're facing early on in their journey?
The most common questions challenges that men are facing as I meet them is pretty simple. I mean, doesn't mean it's easy, but it's pretty simple. Most people that I meet, most men that I meet, have not yet learned how to regulate states of stress and disconnection. So if you just look at us as from a biological perspective, I think we're much more than that. But just from a biological perspective, utilizing that is an aspect of our nature. We have a nervous system which has 3 core elements to it. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which most people have probably heard of. That's really a state of activation. So think of that as activation. Then we have what's called dorsal vagal. That's a fancy word for saying shutdown. That's where freeze response, if you take that down all the way, that's where a freeze response lives. Now, most men who are working in the West are normally oscillating between those two states, between overactivation, which is stress and overwhelm, and then doing that so much that they then seek out drink, drugs, alcohol, porn, fill in the blank, that then re-regulate their nervous system temporarily, creates like temporary relief, which then normally catapults them into a lower state of shutdown where kind of shame, guilt, apathy live. And then they pick themselves back up the hole for 5 days, and then they go back into it again. So like that's the common pattern. And there's no judgment, like zero judgment there. I mean, I did this personally, and I understand it intimately, which just, increases my care and compassion. But it just makes sense, right? If you haven't learned how to be with your direct experience, and you haven't learned how to meet your internal needs, then your biological system is going to take over, and it's going to find ways to do that so that you can be in a type of, so that you can kind of alleviate the suffering that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would agree that we have learned in some ways, but we learned the wrong way. We've learned from our forefathers, from our cousins, our uncles, our brothers. It's just like, work your fucking ass off, dude. And like get out there and and then what do you do after work? It's like, oh, we're going to have a drink, or maybe get to the gym, which I think is healthy. But this
that's why it's called happy hour.
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Very true. So it's like an unlearning of the learning in order to get to where the place you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, if we really look at it as a species, in this moment, we're psychologically, emotionally, spiritually illiterate. Like that's just the moment we've grown up in. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just the moment of time we're in. If we rewind the clocks 200 years, we would have been illiterate in many other ways. Most people couldn't read or write. It was just the elite few who had that capacity because it's all that was necessary. Everyone else didn't need to read or write. However, if you send your child to school today and they're 8 years old and they're struggling with their reading, writing, and mathematics, you're going to get a phone call from the teacher and there's going to be some type of intervention. However, 200 years ago, no one cared. It just wasn't the world that we lived in back then.
Right. Everyone's trying to survive.
No, exactly that. And I mean, we're just in a new position. We're a few hundred years down the line. We've applied all of those intelligences. I mean, mathematics and linguistics are powerful tools that allow us to communicate in many different ways. I mean, we wouldn't be here in this type of technology talking over video across the world if it wasn't for those capacities. So amazing. Well done here. Well done, Team Human. And we just have to acknowledge in this moment, without judgment, we're just, as a species, predominantly emotionally, psychologically, spiritually illiterate. And what that means is, there's a skill set that we can learn. And I don't truly believe, I know in my bones that this skill set is learnable because I was all of those things. All of those
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely. I mean, we agree.
So it's a skill set.
Yeah. And Will and I, we've learned that, and we've seen ourselves learn that, and we've seen ourselves kind of wake up, if you will. You're clearly conveying that same message. And we've even taught, as you have, other men these practices, and we've seen them wake up after learning, becoming more emotionally literate. What has been your experience with men and them, first of all, asking for help, because that definitely seems like a very tricky thing for most men, and then seeing them, once you're working with them, seeing them wake up? What does that look like, and how does that feel to see that?
I mean, it's the best feeling in the world. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's amazing, very fulfilling, and yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I've been fascinated in the underpinnings of what these specific skills are, and then how to both deeply integrate them myself in my own life. So I'm a practitioner, continued practitioner, and then how to teach them in the most skillful way. I mean, these are really the questions that I've been asking because, as Bucky Fuller said, we don't change the world by fighting it. We change the world by making the current model obsolete. And I believe in that. I mean, if we just look at the political sphere in the world, I mean, it's just, we're recording this on the day of the election, and
the eve of the election.
There's so much division.
Yeah.
The eve of the election.
I'm sorry, not the eve, the day after the fucking election.
Day after.
Yeah. We got a new president. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, we're seeing all of that division. It can even create division inside of families, right? But that the whole political sphere is kind of set up to have us relate in kind of, lower emotional states. And they're not bad, but they're lower emotional states because that's where the predominant part of society is. So if we look at the election campaign, I don't think they use language above 4th grade. Why? Because that's where most people are.
Lowest common denominator.
No judgment. Yeah, so that's where it falls to. So if we want to change what we're seeing out there, the only way that's going to change en masse to be the type of world and have the type of functionality, personally, relationally, in terms of a planetary system that we desire, it's going to require enough people to become literate in those skills. So there's enough regulation, self-awareness, connection to self, other, and planet, so that as we look out in the political sphere, the what we see out there will change. It has to change. People get into power and positions of power because they reflect where we are as a group. And that's just a part of it. So if we really wanted to change out there, as we know, I think every great teacher said, the change starts inside. And what I sense is happening is that we're a part of a wave in this moment that this skill set is starting to come online.
Yeah. I think it's being called forth to come online. And to say, John and I have been producing this show for almost, 4.5 years. And I know there's a lot, we're continually growing our community, and I thank everyone for listening. But all you kind of fuckers out there who are still Sorry, I love you guys. Still like spectators in the arena. You know what I mean? And you're listening and listening passively. You know, there's a part of you that comes to this podcast because you know you need some help. Rick, what would you say to these guys, or how do they take this first step to get out of the spectator of this all, and then take on their first practice and realize that they're worth it?
As I was going to point to before, it's really learning these skills, and I mean this will apply to people who are just listening and spectating, and I think it might help reinforce for listeners who have been on the journey a little longer. So what I've come to find at this point, there's some key skills that really support our flourishing, our family's flourishing, which then is what we're talking about, that being able to be done en masse. And one of the skills is nervous system regulation. So you can learn that in many different ways, but learning how to regulate yourself from states of stress back into a state of connection is essentially going to allow for even a deeper meditative practice to emerge. So, you know, it can be really hard to meditate if your nervous system is feeling super dysregulated. And then sometimes we can get stuck as meditators if we're just finding this state of relaxation in the morning, and then we go out into our life, and then states of stress emerge, and then we still haven't learned how to make the pathway between a state of activation, stress, and then back into connection. So we really have to groove that pathway, and that's something I begin with all my clients, regardless of where they are on the path. It's just like, let's get some reps in here, so that, you know, we're not just practicing being calm, albeit that's a part of it. We're then bringing in intentionally states of stress that are relevant to that person's life in this moment, and then learning how to regulate the nervous system back down into a state of connection, bringing in states of things that, you know, the men are shutting down from in their lives, whether that's the conversation they need to have to their wife or conversation they need to have with their team or boss. It's then learning how to feel that sense of unsafety that's having you shut down, and then learn how to raise your nervous system up a bit, find your belly and balls, and then put yourself back in your heart. And then you can kind of make that movement. You know, you can start to make those movements. And if you do enough reps on that for 2, 3, 4 weeks, first you're kind of like riding the bike up the hill, and then eventually these skills start to become automatic. And then from there, things kind of open up. And from there, it's okay, cool. Now we've got that down. We got basic nervous system regulation. Then we could start looking at, you know, the skill of mentalizing. So being able to work with psychic phenomena as it arises. You know, that's kind of what you were doing with the guy you mentioned from last week. Parts work, IFS work with a practitioner is essentially teaching someone how to mentalize their psychic phenomena and then integrate it into the wholeness of their being. So you can learn that with a practitioner. You can also learn that by yourself, and that can become an internalized skill, so that, you know, as my, say, wife or friend says something that triggers something in my nervous system, I can recognize the phenomena within inside me. Oh yeah, that feels like it's in my belly. Oh, that's Mr. Frustration, you know, and we're just anthropomorphizing it. That's Mr. Frustration. Okay, and as soon as I'm doing that and I say, hey, Mr. Frustration, you're a part of me, welcome. In that moment, I've created a wider view, just like we do in meditation. And then I can start to interact with that psychic phenomena in such a way that I can regulate myself. So that would be another skill, would be mentalizing. And then from there, actually, that's when meditation practice opens up and gets interesting. Because at this point, you can regulate your nervous system. Now you can work with psychic phenomena, which creates a much deeper sense of safety in any human being, any man that I work with. From there, then it actually allows concentration practice, which would, you know, normally be the beginning of someone's, you know, journey, whether it be 9 stages or other practices where we're working on essentially dopamine. Then concentration practice becomes a lot easier because you're feeling safer, and it's really hard to concentrate if your nervous system is overactivated or underactivated. So we work on that first, and then concentration practice opens up, and, you know, from there, the kind of world's your oyster. The only other skill I'd sprinkle on top of that at the same time would be learning communication skills and learning how to be able to resolve conflict. And I mean, you put all those things together. I mean, that for me at this point in my kind of like current thesis is like the fundamental skills that would then open up the rest of the path. And, you know, from there we could talk about emptiness practice and transcendent practices. But I mean, if you haven't got those core down, those other ones might be a little bit shaky.
We started this show off talking about trauma and purpose, and that's one of the things that really kind of surprised me when you guys reached out and we talked about getting you on this show. I was like, oh man, what is this part? So without naming names, clearly, is there a client story that illustrates that transformation from viewing trauma kind of as an obstacle or a barrier to seeing it as a source of purpose?
Every single one of my clients has been through that journey in some way. And let me I have a client wall beside me. So I'm going to turn to my wall and I'm going to keep everyone's pictures on the wall. It's kind of cute. But really just help.
or you're
just helps me.
Or you're a psychopath, like, like
one of the two.
A murderer or something. It's like, there's
one of the two.
I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it kind of looks like one of those, those detective walls.
That's what I'm talking about. That's
with
what
I'm
string.
With the strings.
Yeah. I mean, it sometimes feels like that. Yeah, I've got a client here who I won't name who was working in
just show us his picture.
America.
I'm sorry, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, who was working in corporate America. I mean, there's many different stories that are nearly the same. And he was essentially just really shut down from the things that he truly cared about in his life. And was working inside of that environment and never feeling truly fulfilled, always kind of having the experience of something being missing. But because he didn't yet have the capacities in order to know what he really wanted emotionally, because he wasn't in touch with his body and emotion, emotionality, his values, what really matters to him, that was kind of shut down and suppressed. And obviously, if you shut down and suppress that, then it can be really hard to know what you're a stand for, to know what you're a yes for, to know what is aligned and what's not aligned. So we went back and worked on that kind of pre-personal, like the earlier developmental material, in such a way and equipped him with those skill sets that allowed him to then deeply know what he wanted to do. And inside of that, he found things that he was deeply passionate about, improved his, relationships, which were not going in a great direction, because he was now able to regulate his nervous system, work with his psychic phenomena, and be able to communicate his needs and be able to communicate through conflict. Then he was able to have both fulfillment inside his relationships and the deeper knowing and understanding of who he really fucking is as a man and what he cares about as a human being, and then able to go after those pursuits. And I mean, I was just thinking of one client there, but that's pretty much every single client that I work with. And it's the same pattern, right? It's like we've been shut down, repressed from who we truly are, didn't feel safe enough to speak our needs as a child, hid our emotions from our father and maybe even our mother, or got punished for them. So we shove that down there, and then we kind of become this, shell of a self. And it's just unpacking that, putting the right skills in, and then that allows for the natural flourishing of an authentic self-expression to come through.
Well, let's go deeper into that, like skills-based, practicum kind of approach. I mean, you have this awakening. I mean, that's what's so great about working with a coach. It's like, a good coach and like yourself, I mean, really holds space and gives people the opportunity to really kind of drop in and examine and see and observe and what's working, what isn't working. And then there's those next steps. It's like, well, all right, this is a journey, and we got to we got to find what those skills are, and then actually try those skills on. So, what are some of the common skills or the most successful skills that you employ with your students in order to kind of take those first steps and keep going deeper into the path of self-realization and deeper into self-actualization then?
So we call these the core skills of a larger framework of liberative development. And the core skills are learning to regulate your nervous system.
How do you do that? Yeah. What is that? Breath work, meditation, exercise? Like, what is that?
Yeah. So I trained with polyvagal theory and as a breathwork facilitator as well. And inside of that, how I do it, and there's many ways to do it, is I have men create a deep sense of safety and trust in their heart, which anyone can do. I mean, you could think of a moment right now, anyone listening, where you were in a deep state of connection and safety. It could be watching a sunset. It could be with an animal, with a loved one, with a friend, where you just felt deeply safe, deeply connected. So that's ventral vagal. Once we got that locked in, we do some reps there to make sure that you can kind of connect to it. And then it's intentionally creating states of dysregulation and coming back into connection, which you could do in a breathwork session. You could go to a local breathwork session. You're going to ramp your nervous system up through the breathing techniques. And then if you're with a good facilitator or you just know what you're doing when you've listened to this, so now you do, as long as you come back to a state of connection after that high state of arousal, then you're learning how to regulate your nervous system through those higher states of activation and or deactivation, and then coming back to connection. I mean, your nervous system will mostly do it by itself, but obviously with facilitation, with music, you're kind of increasing the likelihood of those results being supportive for that neurochemical cycle to be working in the right direction, which is essentially cortisol, adrenaline, mixed with serotonin, oxytocin, stress with love and connection and safety. When those all things are together, that's when, you know, transformative healing happens. So that would be the first one.
Yeah, that sounds like a happy hour cocktail to me, John. You know, you think it's definitely. It's like, give me some of that fucking happy hour. I'm sorry,
Right?
sorry, Rick. Oh no.
I mean, it would be a bestseller. You know?
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude. The new mocktail.
Even with a little bit of adrenaline and adrenaline and cortisol,
spice it up a little bit, you know.
It's like Red Bull and vodka.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
and Molly. We'll throw some fucking Molly in there and be like, what? Anyway.
And I mean, from whilst you just mentioned Molly, just to kind of, you know, keep linking pieces in here, the reason in a therapeutic context that's really good, and or a party context, the reason in a therapeutic context as MDMA is really helpful is because you're like guaranteeing that you're putting the person in a state where there's plenty of oxytocin, serotonin kicking about, and then you bring in the states of disconnection, cortisol, adrenaline, from your experiences, whatever you've been through. And you bring those things together, you've got those neurochemicals mixing together. So it can be done chemically, it can also be done non-chemically. And ultimately, I believe even if you're going down like a therapeutic route like that, learning how to do it inside is still an essential part of the kind of internalization. Otherwise, you can still kind of depend on it, even subtly from the outside. So first skill, nervous system regulation. From there, then learning mentalization. So learning how to mentalize and work with your own psychic phenomena. Obviously, a practitioner, coach can support you in that. I mean, there's many ways you could learn it. You could go work with an IFS therapist or coach for 3 to 6 months, and you'll learn how to work with your psychic phenomena. Or you can go drink ayahuasca and take 5 grams of mushrooms, and your psychic phenomena is going to come right up, but you may or may not be able to process it. So that's also the skill. So again, if you learn this skill before tipping on gasoline, then when you go on it, say a medicine journey, if that's on your you know path, then you're already going to have developed the skill of how to work with the phenomena as it arises, which is more likely to create an experience that allows for deeper integration. I mean, I don't believe there's such thing as a bad trip, but I think there's more and less skillful ways to do it.
Well, one thing I'll say is like, if you are going to go on a journey like that and use very powerful medicine like ayahuasca or psilocybin, or even Molly, you know, I think the integration part of it is very key. And even if you have these skills, what I've seen, Rick, like, you know, I've been doing a lot of these practices for over a decade, and I've definitely had those experiences, but without the support of actually an integrative therapist that works with these medicines, you know, I don't think you really get the deeper level of insight that medicine has shown you. So if you're going to go out there, like, you know, I think actually I saw Matt Greenhouse, John, this past weekend at the Army Air Force game, and go Mules, is that right? Anyway, we actually talked about going on another Beckley retreat, and doing a psilocybin experience together, you know, in Jamaica, but it also has this integration built in, which I think is really important to help you process. So I just wanted to put that out there for anyone who's looking this direction. I really suggest working with somebody in an integrative fashion after you do the medicine. And we're not even advocating the medicine. You're on your own path, your own journey. It's definitely helped myself. It's helped John. It's helped you. I'm sure, Rick, you've done that. But maybe it's not for you, but definitely do your research before you kind of take on that journey, because it's a very profound and very challenging.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I would second that.
Absolutely.
If whoever you're gonna go down that path, and I think it could be really beneficial. I also don't think it's completely necessary, but it's a beautiful pathway for some. To do exactly what you just said, to make sure either you go out and get your own facilitation and guidance to support the integration before and after for at least 4 weeks, but probably more 8 and 8 would be my ultimate recommendation. And just or ensuring that the facilitators that you're working with kind of build that into the program. That's a real green flag if they're already doing that. So that was the second skill.
Yep, exactly. I want to hear number 3 and 4.
So number 3 is communication skills. So learning how to communicate in such a way that supports transformative conversations. So a part of this is learning how to communicate your own needs. But if you start doing this skill before you've learned how to regulate your nervous system and work with your psychic phenomena, or work with your own experience, and if you try to communicate before that, then obviously it's quite difficult, because sometimes you can be disconnected. Some men can be disconnected from their bodies, their emotions, their needs. So this is why I share this skill third. And this skill is super transformative. I mean, this skill itself, changed my life as much as meditation, because it actually allowed me to be able to go into conversations with enough of a framework to actually be able to really listen to what the other person has to say, versus just pretending to listen. Waiting for my moment to speak, and instead having a nervous system that can kind of hold. I was having one of these chats with my wife last week, and there's a lot of material coming at me, but at this point, fortunately, I've put enough reps in to be able to hold what she's sharing and let her just get it all out. Get it all out, my love. Is there more? Okay, and I can just hold it, and I can be with it in such a way that I don't try and wriggle out of it. And I feel her experience. Doesn't mean I necessarily have to agree with what she's saying, but I can feel her experience, attune to what she's going through, reflect what she's going through, so she can really feel seen and heard, and her direct experience. It's also really nice to know what she's going through. Makes us feel connected. And then from there, we can kind of continue the conversation. So, those 3 alone would change any man's life. And then the next skill would be meditative practices. So concentration practice. And then obviously there's more that we go on in terms of like the structure that we've kind of built, but those would be the kind of core 4.
I'm gonna add one, if I may, and getting in community of other men. I think that's one thing that I'm seeing, through the work that John and I are doing, even in a virtual setting. I know we have a shameless plug for the Social Fitness Club coming up in January. No, for real. And the reason we're doing this is to build community, to create connection, and to also obviously kind of self-reflect through the reflection of others. And we're seeing, we're actually doing both right now in the same course. There's 2 meditation courses running right now. And we have time, like in this 1-hour time capsule that we do the program, where we get time, about 15 minutes, to really hear what other people's experiences are, their trials, tribulations, or triumphs, or insights and stuff like that. And we really learn from each other, because I think what's so key is the common humanity element that could be overlooked, and men can so easily go into the lone wolf mentality. So thank you for those 4, and I hope you don't mind me adding that 5th one, but I just seen it to be tremendously powerful and beneficial and transformative for everybody, especially men, because that's not where we typically go, sadly, but that's where I hope more of us do go in the near future. But this has been great, Rick. We're gonna unless there's something pressing you want to say, like we're gonna start closing out, but I really appreciate your time today.
Likewise, brother.
Yeah, man, this has been amazing, and I know it's gonna. You can hear my kids yelling in the background.
3:00, man.
they're back. They're back. So, hey, Rick, it's a snow day here in Colorado, so my kids are all home from school, and it's just been chaos out there. So, anyhow, been great having you on the show. For our listeners that want to tune into what it is you're doing, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
best way to get a hold. And I mean, you need a nervous system to be able to hold a family like that as well, right, John?
Indeed.
Best way to get a hold of me would be my website, rickwilliam.com. And then if the men are interested in some of the things I've been sharing here today as well, I have a free app both on the iTunes store and the Android store. And if you just look up Toolbox by Rick William, all the different nervous system exercises that I've been talking about here today are kind of inside that. There's a free 7-day process that you can go through where you can kind of learn this skill set. And ultimately now everything in there is free. So there's plenty to be getting on with there. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. John, Will, I really appreciated both your depth in terms of the wisdom that you're both carrying, but also the levity that I've been able to enjoy and experience for the last hour.
Yeah, again, if we can't laugh at ourselves, then what good is this whole thing called life? So
Yeah,
Rick, it's been phenomenal having you here. Definitely want to stay connected. Love what you're doing. Please let us know in the future how we may be able to help or how we may be able to collaborate. I mean, men helping men is an incredible blessing, and I personally take it as an opportunity, and I take it as with a lot of gratitude, and I know you guys do too. And I have a lot of gratitude for you here today. That said, I know typically we wrap it up with the grounding practice. I unfortunately do have to bounce right now.
All good.
So I'm gonna say goodbye. And for our listeners, for Rick, thank you again so much. And until next time, take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Peace.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.